Hey guys, AJ with Relentless Racing. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, I'm AJ and I'm an avid motorsports enthusiast. I make DIY videos that have a lot of detail and some really good lighting, and I also include some racing videos as well. So welcome. For those of you that are subscribers, all 8 of you, I thank you very much because my last video, I don't know what I did differently, but it was ranked very well within my channel. So thank you so much. For everyone else, if you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button and hit that notification button so we can grow this channel together. In today's video, we're going to completely tear down a 2ZZ GE. And no, it's not the same 2ZZ that I rebuilt for 2ZZ Mistress. So don't worry, everything's okay with 2ZZ Mistress. This 2ZZ actually came with 2ZZ Mistress's chassis, and the previous owner took off some accessories and also started adding some parts to the motor that are required for the MRS swap. So if you have a 2ZZ that's from a front wheel drive car, the teardown will be a little bit different. Now for the power steering, it's pretty simple to remove. So once you see it, you'll be able to remove it. I guarantee it. Are you ready for some destruction? Let's do this. Before we continue, let's talk about today's video sponsor. It's me. I make these videos for the community and they take a lot of time and effort. So help a brother out and support me by buying some stuff off my website, www.shoprelentlessracing.com. And if you need other race car parts that aren't listed on the website, send me an email at shoprelentlessracing@gmail.com and let me see if I can't get you a deal. All right, let's get back to the video. Let's take a closer look at the cams now that we have the valve cover off. So this over here is the exhaust side. Typically the exhaust side doesn't experience any problems with wiping. But if you look at the intake side, again this is the intake side right here. Right here, I could feel that with my nail and it is dug up just a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm going to rotate the crank clockwise with a 19 millimeter. And so that's number 1. Let's take a look at number 2. Here's number 2. Wow, look at that guy. Let's look at her close. Oh yeah, she's tore up just a little bit. But that, I guess, is what they call cam wiping. Let's look at the third lobe. Oh yeah, look at that guy. She's pretty trash, pretty good too. Not nearly as bad. That one I don't feel as bad. Still messed up though. Let's go look at number 4. And there's number 4 right there. Barely feel that one.
The previous owner already installed the MRS swap oil dipstick. The 2ZZ oil dipstick is attached to the intake manifold.
Let me just remove this like that. Well, we don't need this dipstick. Okay. There it goes. All right.
I prefer to remove the lift oil pressure switch while it is attached to the cylinder head.
Verify top dead center, mark at the top, mark at the top. The dot matches the dot.
Check out that metallic debris on that crankshaft position sensor. Unlike the 1ZZ water pump, the 2ZZ water pump has composite fins. Don't forget to remove the water pump gasket. Unlike the 1ZZ, the 2ZZ timing chain cover uses a gasket. I'm clearly struggling here because the crank angle sensor plate usually comes off a little bit easier, and this is the first side of damage. Check this thing out. You can see the damage here, and you can also see the damage in the key. This is the second indicator of damage on this motor. This is the crankshaft timing gear, and it's troublesome to get off, but it does come off. This one I'm struggling quite a bit because the crankshaft key is actually bent, and I actually have to use a puller to pull the crankshaft timing gear off. The crankshaft key should be tight, but not this tight. And this is the third indicator. Check out that hole in the oil pump.
Uh-oh, not a good sign. This thing's blown up on the inside. Not a good sign.
Right now, I'm taking off the cam caps, and the cam caps are simple to remove. All you have to do is pry them up gently, and don't worry about mixing them up. Each one is labeled with position 1 through 5, and an I for intake or E for exhaust, and arrows which point towards cylinder 1. There is clearly wear on each of the intake rocker arm lift pads. This is common in all 2ZZs.
So getting out the rocker shaft on the exhaust side, I'm just going to stick my finger right in here. I'm going to push this guy out, and it comes right out, and you'll notice that these guys drop out. And there is the shaft. This guy seems like it has an issue, and so I'm going to take my air hammer. I tried pushing it out, but I can't get it out. So I'm going to use my air hammer. I'm going to try and get this thing out. Here's my air hammer, 1/2 inch bit. Here we go. Let's see if it'll come out smooth. Now, that's still tight. Got it out. And God for the long extension right there. So if you notice, there is some aluminum right there, some tidbits right in there. Let's see, there's some aluminum tidbits right there. There's some right there. There's one right here as well. Whoops. There's one right here as well. Really, really interesting. And you could tell that it was gouged right here too. So that'll only allow it to go in or out one way. So I think I'm gonna clean that one up. I think that's probably to rotate it just in case you have it the wrong direction. Probably had a lift bolt that broke in here before.
Removing the cylinder head is pretty simple. All you have to do is use a 10mm double hex socket and a 1/2 inch ratchet. Use the sequence of outside in, and that'll help make sure that your head doesn't get warped. Once the head bolts are cracked loose, use a gun to remove them. God bless Milwaukee. Then use a magnetic stick to pull the head bolts out. And sun's out, guns out, pull the head straight up. Normally I'm a little more careful when I'm removing an oil pan, but this bond is really strong, plus this motor's dead. Let's rotate the crankshaft so we can access the rod caps for 2 and 3. Now crack the rod bolts loose, and then we're going to raise them up just a little bit. We're not going to totally unthread them though. Now with a little whack-a-mole, the rod actually will be released from the crank, and then we can remove the rod caps easily. Now let's clean up those rod caps and make sure we identify them just in case we need to inspect them later.
Wow, the crank looks good. Crank looks good. Probably needs some new bearings. And that is a number. I think that's a 1 right there, real faint.
Let's repeat the process for rod cap 3.
You can kind of see the number 2 right there.
Let's push piston rod assembly number 2 out of the block.
These are the larger reliefs. So that's on the intake side. And the intake side is this way. So it is this way. So this protrusion faces towards 1 right here, just like the 1ZZ. And I have no idea what number this bearing is because I don't see it. I may have to look with a microscope, but it looks like it was about to let loose. Interesting. Piston looks pretty good. Probably just needs a little cleanup. I don't know why I keep getting caught on that thing. I wonder if they sell new rings for this thing, but I guess we could find out. Looks pretty good. Looks like it's never hit either.
Okay, let's repeat that same process for piston rod assembly 3. Checking out the piston rod assembly 3, the upper rod bearing looks pretty good, and so does the piston. Let's mark them. After a little bit of cleanup, it seems that there's no scarring or scoring. However, it does look a little bit dark, so it probably experienced a little lack of oil and it got hot. And let's mark our bearing.
Rotate the crankshaft.
Let's crack them loose. Then we're going to lift them just a little bit, and we're not going to totally take them out of the rod. And of course, we're going to do a little whack-a-mole to release the rod from the crank. Just like before, we're going to clean the rod caps, mark them, and then continue with our inspection.
It kind of looks like a 2. In any case, this is one lower. Ooh, that one has a 2 on it. Sweet. So this is 4 lower. Almost looks like a 2 right there. So this is 4 upper. The rod journal on number 1 looks pretty good. And check out the rod journal right here too. This is number 4. She looks really good.
Let's crack open the bolts that hold on to the bearing cap subassembly. They're all 12mm and you can use a 12-point socket. Sequence is outside in. Remove the 4 14mm hex covers and the oil filter union, which is a 12mm hex. Now release all the 12mm bolts that are around the perimeter of the bearing cap subassembly. Now we've cracked all the bolts for the bearing cap subassembly, so it's time to go to town with your Milwaukee. Make note of the different lengths of the bolts for the bearing cap subassembly.
Shorty, there's only one long, it's right there. What's happening is the crank is stuck because of the rear main seals on. So I'm just going to grab the crank and the whole thing and lift it out. Okay, well, let's see what these mains look like. So 1 is eaten up, 2 doesn't look bad, 3 is still on the crank, 4 is eaten up, 5 is eaten up. So here's number 3, it's still stuck on in there. Let's just take this guy off. Wow, it looks pretty trashed. That looks pretty trashed too. Oh man, that thing's like welded on. Let's look at 5. Trashed. This is 4. Trashed. 3 is still stuck on, it fused on, I believe. 2 actually looks pretty good. 1 trashed. Here's 1. Yeah, it's trashed. 2. 4, trashed. 5, trashed. Bummer. Looks like it spun this bearing right here. Yeah, it spun it. Look how tore up that bearing is. And here is, look at that guy. Let's not forget the oil squirters. So obviously these are all of the main bearings, the top half of them. The top half is easy to recognize because it has a oiling hole, 2 oiling holes in them, and there's a path for them. The other side, which is the bottom of it, is blank and it is flat. There's no oiling groove in there. So let's mark these guys just like we marked the rod bearings. So push this guy out. I like to use my pen for it. Grab it. And since this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is 2 on the upper. Remember, we're upside down. And then here is the lower section, 2L, just so we can keep track of everything. And then we also have thrust bearings which go right here. The thrust bearings installed just like this. And the main thing is there are grooves on the outsides. So the grooves face outwards, the flats face up against the block just like that. And you have 2 of them, and here they are right here. Let's take a look at the cylinder walls. You could see in cylinder 1 there is some scarring, and let's just check out the other side. There's a little bit of scarring there as well. Let's go to look at number 2. Here's number 2. This is the intake side, number 2. And then the exhaust side on number 2. Less scarring. Number 3. Hardly any scarring there. Hardly any scarring, let's see. And that is the exhaust side of number 3. Let's go take a look at number 4. Here's number 4. Number 4 looks pretty clean. And then on the exhaust side of number 4. Yeah, all right. So obviously the scarring in number 1 right here, check that out. You know, I'd probably run this thing. If I wasn't racing this thing, I would totally run it. Obviously the best thing to do would be sleeve this puppy and get her back to her regular size, and then you could do whatever you want. During testing, during leak down testing, we found that cylinder 1 and cylinder 3, the exhaust valves were leaking. Also, when we tried to take out the rocker arms, the exhaust side came out really nicely, but the intake side, we had to pound out of there. Probably had an issue before with a broken lift bolt, and whoever took it out or put it back in, it was troublesome to get that thing out. Here's the oil pan. In the oil pan, you could kind of see some metallic tidbits. There's some tidbits right there. The oil pump exploded, and I think that's what happened. That's what caused this thing to blow up. You can kind of see that the oil pump gear in there is completely shattered. There's also a hole in the oil pump right there, which is pretty crazy. And then if you look at the block, we obviously just talked about the cylinder walls. There's a little bit of scarring here. And then the girdle. You can see some of the bearings here in the girdle. These are the main bearings. The main bearings got trashed, and it looks like 3 got spun. And you can kind of see that right in this section right here. Those are the rocker arms assemblies, or shafts rather. And again, the intake one was a little bit trashed. And here are the piston and rod assemblies with all of the rod caps. All of the pistons look pretty good. If you look at the side of them, just everything looked really good. No pits on the top from a valve hitting it or what have you. The bearings didn't look bad. They didn't look great. So what's next? The MRS is a really fun vehicle on the street, and it's even more fun on the track. In fact, the MRS is probably the cheapest mid-engine vehicle that you could purchase. So this next video,
I want to take the MRS to the track, and I want to show you guys that it can be a fun vehicle, whether it's 1ZZ or 2ZZ. In fact, I'm going to compare the 1ZZ MRS, which is Project Silver, to a 2ZZ MRS, which is 2ZZ Mistress. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss this next video, please subscribe and hit that notification button. This is AJ with Relentless Racing. Stay relentless, and I'll see you on the track.